when it comes to the onboarding experience, it's kind of as much about the process and documentation as it is about the people. So if a community doesn't have the resources, then it's obviously a lot of pressure on the people to onboard someone, versus you can have all the documentation, but if the environment is not great, then people will not get through it anyway. So it's kind of a balance between those two.
There's another factor. So for me, every project I've ever been involved in has had some element of scratching my own itch. It's had some element of I used it personally or I used it professionally, or there was a reason I was involved. So it can be tempting to think that if you're not getting new contributors, that it's the fault of the documentation or the fault of the onboarding process or the fault of something you're doing wrong. But in actual fact, it has to do with the motivation of the contributor. And a really motivated contributor will push through even toxic behavior. A contributor who is not motivated to work on your particular project will not do it, even if you make it as easy as possible. And there's also a domain, how easy it is to get involved can also have a lot to do with how complicated the technology is. And that isn't necessarily that the technology is unnecessarily complicated. It could just be you're solving a really complicated problem, like managing clouds. That is a really complicated problem, and the knowledge that you need to effectively contribute to a project like that is huge. It's not like contributing to a little JavaScript library that generates random numbers or something, like just about anybody can do that, do a drive-by contribution, and it is valuable. It takes it's not rocket science, but it takes a much higher degree of expertise to wrap your head around the domain of knowledge necessary to make a good contribution to an infrastructure project. And it's like layers and layers of knowledge. Like you kind of need to understand the hardware that you're running on, and the Linux kernel, and the operating system, and then the way you network connect the compute machines and the storage machines, and then like orchestration best practices, and like there's these tiers and tiers of knowledge. So I think having sympathy for the fact that there may be a massive hurdle long before the person even looks at your mailing list. Like the reason they're not there could have nothing to do with your project. Honestly, I think there might be room for teaching more of those concepts, more of the concepts rather than just the code. Because I don't think kids come out of college. I don't think people come out of their work experience necessarily having that. You don't get a certification in this kind of expertise. So yeah, I don't know how, but I don't know, a series of YouTube videos teaching the fundamentals of cloud computing, I've been thinking about that for hardware design, because modern hardware design, even though we're shifting more into open silicon, open hardware, actually the way you learn modern hardware design is you go work for Intel or ARM or AMD. You work for a company that does it, and then you absorb their knowledge, and then you become an expert. But at the same time, that means you're baked in with their biases from 70 years of the way they've done hardware engineering, and some of it's terrible. Some of it is absolutely terrible, and they should not be doing things that way anymore. But no one's teaching any other way, and there's no way to gain that knowledge.